Imagine this, you find out your spouse has been cheating with someone you both know, someone you trusted. Most people would confront them, maybe even walk away, but not this husband. Instead, he begins planning a ruthless revenge that will leave them both wishing they'd never crossed him. Every step is carefully calculated, and with each move, the tension builds. This isn't just about getting even, it's about creating a payback so unforgettable, they'll regret it for the rest of their lives. Stick around, because this story goes places you'd never expect, and the ending? You won't see it coming. Well, Mr. Taylor, you're in great shape, the doctor said with a grin. Your cholesterol's down to 127, your good-to-bad ratio is excellent, your lungs are clear, your PSA levels are perfect, and I see here you've even dropped 5 pounds since our last checkup. Whatever you're doing, keep at it. If all my patients were as healthy as you, I'd be out of work, he added with a chuckle. So, Doc, there's nothing wrong with me, then? I asked, hoping for final confirmation. Frank, is there something specific you're worried about? Just wanted to double-check the blood work. He gave the report another once-over. Nothing, absolutely nothing, he assured me, shutting my file. I'll see you next year. My nurse will set up the appointment on your way out. Man, that was a relief. At least I didn't have to worry about some nasty surprise, like them pinning me with an STD or worse. That's one less thing to deal with, I thought as I climbed into my car and drove back to work. Now, all I had to do was start narrowing down the suspects. See, I just confirmed something painful, my dear wife, Jenny, had been cheating on me with one of our so-called friends. After 9 years together, I was already plotting how to deal with her and whatever loser she'd chosen. Was I in a rush? Nope. I had plenty of time, now that I knew I was in the clear health-wise. Besides, I knew one thing for sure, I'd never lay a hand on her again, not in that way. How did I find out? Well, she told me herself. Not directly, of course. She didn't just come out and say, Frank, I'm sleeping with so-and-so. No, it was more subtle than that. It was around 9 one night. I'd had a decent day, and I was feeling a bit more affectionate than usual. Honey, I said in my best low voice, you in the mood for a little fun tonight? Not tonight, she replied, flipping open her book. I'm tired, and I just want to relax. I can help you relax, maybe a back rub. Oh, Frank, you just want to get me naked, and that's not happening tonight, she said, eyes back on her book. You're never in the mood anymore. Do I not do it for you? Frank, sometimes you just don't, she said, finally looking up and placing her book on her lap. Well, maybe if we were doing it more often than once every 2 or 3 weeks, you'd feel different. Frank, what part of no don't you understand? I just don't want you tonight. Simple as that. I just stood there, totally thrown. I could barely believe my own wife had just said that. I grabbed my pillow, ready to leave the room. Oh, what, now you're going to sulk, she sneered. Don't worry about it. I won't be bugging you for anything tonight or any time in the future. Since I clearly don't do it for you anymore, I guess I'll just find someone else, I shot back, heading to the spare room down the hall. I heard her say my name, faintly, just once before I shut the door and locked it behind me. I was done begging her for anything. If she didn't want me, fine. I'd try to get some sleep, but this was big, and it was all I could think about all night. The next morning, I came downstairs around 7 o'clock, still tired and still steaming. Frank, I'm sorry for what I said last night. I didn't mean it, I was just tired. Maybe tonight we can, you know, she said with a little smile. Jenny, what are you doing? Tossing me a pity invite? Thinking if you just lie there and let me have my way, it'll all blow over. I snapped at her, my frustration boiling over. Well, guess what, I wouldn't touch that body of yours if it was the last one on this earth, I spat. So don't worry. I won't be asking you for anything else. I grabbed my briefcase. Probably won't be home for dinner, either. Just looking at you turns my stomach, I added, storming out. Jenny must have called me 100 times that day, on my cell, on my office line. And when she started filling up my inbox, I blocked her. I was done listening to how sorry she was. The truth is, she'd turned into a complete jerk over the last 6 months, and I was exhausted from it. Sex had dwindled down to maybe once every couple of weeks, and even then, only after I practically begged her for it. There was always some excuse, and while some might have been legit, most were just worn-out reasons to avoid me. I used to look forward to coming home, setting the scene with a back or foot massage, maybe breaking out the scented oils. But now, all she wanted was to rush through it, to get it over and done with. That night, I had dinner on my own and hit a bar afterward. I nursed a couple of beers while watching the game, not getting home until well past 7 o'clock. Part of me considered sneaking in, but then I thought, why should I? I haven't done a damn thing wrong, As I walked past our bedroom, Jenny threw open the door. Where the hell have you been? She demanded. Out. Why do you care? That seemed to catch her off guard. You didn't call or anything. You could have been lying dead in a ditch for all I knew. Well, guess you wouldn't have had to worry about me pawing at you anymore then, huh? I said, twisting the knife. If you don't mind, it's late, and I could use some sleep. I shut the door in her face and went straight to bed. And you know what? I actually slept better that night. At breakfast the next morning, she asked, so, are you planning on joining us for dinner tonight? I haven't decided yet. Well, how in the hell am I supposed to know then? Look, if I'm here, I'll eat here. And if I'm not, I won't. Does that cover it for you? Well, Adam, let me know when you're done acting like a toddler. Jenny, why don't you go screw yourself? Then again, you're probably already doing that, unless there's someone else in the picture, I said, staring her down. She looked at me, but instead of guilt or anger, I saw a flash of shock, like I'd struck a nerve. The internet has everything these days, and I dove right into it, typing surveillance equipment in the search bar. Thousands of results popped up, and I narrowed them down until I found just what I needed, a small, remote camera system with a recording device. It could support up to 4 tiny cameras and, with an extended memory chip, would capture everything over 5 days, more than enough. I had it shipped overnight to my office. The tricky part was going to be setting it up. See, Jenny didn't work, she stayed home with our 2 kids, Tommy, who was 7, and Maddie, who just turned 5. So figuring out a way to get her out of the house long enough to get everything set up without raising suspicion was going to take some thought. I didn't eat at home much anymore, but I was usually back before 8 o'clock. After all, I still had to work. When I got home, I brushed right past Jenny and spent time with my 2 kids instead. I've got to run to the store for a minute. If it's not asking too much, could you keep an eye on your kids for about 20 minutes until I get back? Jenny asked. Yeah, whatever, I muttered, not bothering to look up. The second she pulled out of the driveway, I made my way to the trunk of my car. I'd planned this out carefully, a camera in the kitchen, one in our bedroom, another down in the basement, and the last one on the back porch. I also had a voice-activated recorder ready to slip under the front seat of her car. The main base station was tucked away in an old trunk up in the attic, with only a power cord barely visible. After a quick test to make sure they were all working, I went back to the living room, where the kids were engrossed in a movie. It was incredible how tiny the cameras were, I had trouble spotting them myself, even knowing where I'd hidden them. The next few days were bound to get interesting. Are you coming to Lisa and Tom's barbecue on Saturday? Jenny asked on Wednesday night. I'm going, with or without you, so honestly, it doesn't matter much to me. You see, there was a group of 8 couples in our neighborhood, and each month one of us would host a barbecue. This time, it was Lisa and Tom's turn. Everyone brought a dish to share, making it a potluck. "Oh, you're so charming. With an invitation like that, how could I say no?" I replied sarcastically. We went together that Saturday night, but she kept her distance from me the entire evening. When the couple's games began, I did everything I could to make sure we ended up dead last. For the next 3 weeks, I watched the footage, waiting for any sign that might confirm my suspicions, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. The only thing that even remotely caught my attention was a conversation Jenny had with one of her friends. I just wished I could have heard the other side of it. "He still won't sleep with me, and it's been almost a month. I didn't think he'd hold out this long. Sure, I bruised his ego, but I figured he'd be back after a couple of days. No, divorce isn't on the table, it's not that bad, well, not yet, anyway. I picked up a new outfit at the mall that could wake the dead, and I'm planning on trying it out tonight. If that doesn't do it, I don't know what will. I'll call you tomorrow and let you know how it went." At least I knew what her plan was for the night. How I'd react was still up in the air. I figured I'd just play it by ear and see how things turned out. At least she was trying, so maybe I'd been wrong about her. Even with all the gadgets in place, I hadn't found a shred of evidence suggesting she was unfaithful. I kept my routine of eating out so she wouldn't suspect anything, but I did come home a little earlier, around 7:30. "You're home early for a change," she said, smiling. "If you're still hungry, there's some meatloaf in the fridge and an apple pie in the oven," she added casually, knowing full well that apple pie was my favorite. She was definitely pulling out all the stops. Around 8:30, I carried our 2 exhausted kids upstairs. I helped them get ready for bed, gave them both a hug and a kiss, and turned out their lights while Jenny tidied up the kitchen. After that, I went downstairs, turned on the TV, and waited. It didn't take long. She wasn't kidding when she said the outfit could raise the dead. The thing was jet black with scarlet red accents, with barely enough fabric to cover what was supposed to be covered. Good Lord, was all that crossed my mind. "Got a little time for me tonight?" she asked, stepping into the room. I wanted to shout, "Hell yes," so loud the neighbors would hear, but instead, I played it cool and asked, "What do you have in mind?" "I've got something in the bedroom that could use your attention, that is, if you're not too busy or still mad at me." "Well, let's go see." "I don't have anything pressing right now," I said, suddenly forgetting all the anger I'd felt toward her. She took my hand, and by the time we got to the bedroom, we were already kissing. It felt every bit as amazing as I'd remembered. Damn, it was good. We ended up making love twice and then fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms. I had my wife back. Life felt right again. No, it felt incredible. We were a couple again. I even started cooking dinner so she could get through her projects without stress before bed. We didn't make love every night, but we made Fridays a regular date night. If only I hadn't gone up to the attic to turn off that damn tape player, I would still be floating in that bliss. But I reset it, took the memory card to work, and that's when my whole world came crashing down. It was the 5th day on the tape, the day after that incredible night. I deleted the other 4 days and, just for fun, decided to listen in. Jenny's probably going to call her friends and brag about how I swept her off her feet last night, I thought, feeling pretty pleased with myself. But what I heard wasn't a chat with one of her girlfriends. It was with someone else. A man. Well, I handled our little problem last night. It was easy as pie, and Frank didn't suspect a thing. That outfit you picked out did the trick. He was practically drooling over me before we even made it to the bedroom. I was ready to let him do anything he wanted, she said, laughing. I wanted to reach through that tape and strangle them both. Don't worry, all I need to do is give him a little taste now and then to keep him happy. I was sure he'd notice something was different, but honestly, it's been so long that he probably couldn't remember what it used to be like. I'll keep him satisfied, and we'll have all the time in the world, she added, laughing again. Whoever she was talking to must have known they had to keep a low profile. As long as we don't get caught, we'll be fine. You keep your wife happy, I'll keep Frank happy, and we'll still find plenty of time for ourselves. Maybe we can sneak away at the next barbecue for a little fun. I love a good challenge. Well, I better go. I've got dinner to make, and the kids will be home soon. No, I gave him some 2 nights ago. I'll just say I've got my period if he asks. He'll never know, she finished, hanging up on him and, in that moment, on our marriage. I sat there listening to that tape over and over, 3 times at least, hoping to catch some detail that might give me a clue about who was on the other end of that call. The only thing I knew for certain was that he was someone I knew. A friend, if you could call someone like that a friend. At least I reset everything before I left. Even without the memory chip, I could still get 12 hours recorded on the unit itself, I thought, clenching my fists. Time to go back to recording everything, I muttered. I was already planning my payback, knowing it had to be complete, so devastating that they'd both wish they'd never been born. I didn't have the details worked out yet, but I had time. And I was going to savor every part of it. The first thing I did was go get tested. Too many things out there these days, and an STD was the first thing that crossed my mind. Just my luck, she'd give me an STD, and I'd be dying from it. Thankfully, the results came back clean. My next move was figuring out who the guy was. I grabbed a notepad and wrote down the names of the 7 couples we regularly spent time with. At first, it seemed impossible that any of them could be involved. These were our friends, people I'd known for over 3 years. Could one of these guys really be sneaking around with my wife? I couldn't believe I was even considering it, but there I was. Our neighbors, Lisa and Tom, were about as classic suburban as it gets. They were in their early 30s, like us, and they seemed happy as could be. Tom was probably my closest friend, and I knew he adored Jenny, but maybe a little too much, I started thinking. Then there was Mary and Jack. They were the oldest in our group, both pushing 50. With Jack's heart issues, there was no way he was having an affair with Jenny. I crossed him off. Next, I thought about Carol and Dan. I could see Dan being a possibility, but I remembered they'd been on a cruise during the time of that suspicious call to Jenny. Unless he was calling from the middle of the ocean, which seemed unlikely, he was out. Then we had Sarah and Jerome, who had joined our group 3 years ago when they moved in from Chicago. Jerome was a pharmaceutical rep and spent most of his time on the road. We'd known Kathy and Bill for about 5 years. Bill had a bit of a reputation as the life of the party, and his wife, Kathy, always kept an eye on him at get-togethers. He'd flirt a bit after a few drinks, but honestly, most of the guys did. I debated keeping him on my list but figured a guy who got that wasted wasn't likely pulling it off. Still, I left his name, just in case. Vicky and John, though, I didn't even consider. They still acted like newlyweds, even after 6 years together. People would joke about needing a hose to cool them down, they were always getting a little too cozy in the hot tub. I used to envy them. Jenny and I had been together 9 years, but we acted more like we'd been married 50, well, at least she did. Then there was Chris. I didn't even hesitate to keep him on my list. His wife Donna was nice enough, but both of them were a little standoffish, always flaunting their wealth. Chris was arrogant and more than once, I'd had to bite my tongue around him. Jenny, though, seemed to like him, or at least, she acted like it. Maybe it was his money. Donna and Chris didn't seem particularly close either, which made me wonder if they had their own problems. I circled his name. When I looked at my list, 3 names jumped out, one of which I couldn't believe I'd put there. Tom was my best friend, but you hear those stories, best friend and all that. And the more I thought about it, the more Chris looked like a strong possibility. We still had a week before our monthly get-together, and I was going to dig up some details on each one of them. Adam, are you still planning to have Dan paint the last 2 rooms upstairs? Jenny asked when I got home that evening. I felt like we really took advantage of him last time. All he charged us was for the paint and a case of beer. I did slip Carol a couple $100 before they went on their cruise, I replied. Friends are friends, but business is business. Let me think about it. It's not like there's a rush with the kids' rooms, is there? Well, we've got the barbecue coming up, and I want the house to look nice. Babe, the house already looks fine. Who's even going to go upstairs to check out the paint on our walls? Adam, it's a woman thing, okay? Jenny said with a sigh. You manipulative witch, I thought. Forget paint, she'll have way bigger problems when I figure out who she's messing around with. At the barbecue, I kept my eyes glued to the guys, watching each of them like a hawk. Bill was chugging beers like they were water, and Tom was doing his usual helpful routine, making himself useful by helping Jenny set out food on the deck. Chris, as always, was bragging about his latest Apple stock gains. From the way Jenny was reacting, I could tell she wasn't impressed by his boasting. Unless they were both acting, Dan was slowly moving down the list of suspects in my mind. With Bill and Dan seeming less likely, my old buddy Tom was becoming suspect number one. After the party, Lisa and Tom hung back to help us clean up. Good turnout, huh? I said to Tom as we cleared plates. Yeah, looked like everyone had a great time, especially Bill, Tom replied with a laugh. Kathy gave him an elbow after his third beer and told him if he got wasted again, he'd be sleeping on the couch. He ended up nursing that last beer for 2 hours. We both laughed. Adam, Tom said, glancing around to make sure no one could hear us, can you keep a big secret? Not even Jenny can know. I nodded. Of course. I'm taking Lisa on a second honeymoon. When we first got married, we were broke, so we just did a weekend at a cheap hotel. I booked a 7-day cruise, and we leave in 2 weeks. She doesn't know yet, but I told her boss so she could get the time off. I just stared at him, stunned. Here I'd been thinking he was my number one suspect, and now he's telling me about whisking his wife away on a surprise trip. Adam, I just need you to keep an eye on my place. Her mom's watching the kids, but if you could stop by once or twice, I'd be grateful. She's going to flip when she finds out, he said, grinning ear to ear. We might not even leave the room much, but at least I got one with a balcony, so we'll have a view of the ocean. You sly dog, I said. How long have you been planning this? Been saving up for it about 6 months now. When Carol and Dan went on their trip and raved about how much fun they had, I thought I'd burst keeping it a secret. Hell, when Carol called from her cell and sent me a picture of the Mexican pyramids, I almost gave it away. Tom, how was Carol able to call from there? I asked. Adam, there are cell towers everywhere these days. And if not, ever heard of satellites? Expensive, sure, but you can make a call from almost anywhere now, Tom explained. But trust me, I won't be making any calls. I plan on keeping myself occupied, he added with a wink. Yeah, okay, call me clueless, I muttered. I crossed Tom off my list right then and there. He shouldn't have been on it in the first place. That left Bill and Chris, neither of whom seemed like great candidates. Who in the world was Jenny sleeping with? Then, around 3 o'clock in the morning, it finally hit me, Dan. The next day at work, everything started clicking into place. Dan, a self-employed painter, had the flexibility to come and go as he pleased, while his wife worked a regular office job. He could easily meet Jenny during the day without anyone getting suspicious. Looking back, it must have started 6 months ago when he painted our bedroom. They were probably going at it right there in our own bed. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Part of me wanted to go straight to them and end it in the most violent way possible, but I wasn't about to throw my life away and leave my kids without a dad. Jenny, I was thinking about it, why don't we have Dan paint those last 2 rooms? Then we'll have the whole upstairs done. Could you give him a call and arrange it? Just make sure he knows I'm paying him fair for the job this time, I said over the phone from my office. We might even consider getting new carpet while we're at it. Adam, one thing at a time. We're not exactly rolling in money. Let's get the walls done first and then worry about flooring, she replied. You're right, babe. I don't know what I'd do without you, I said, though the words made me sick. Yeah, you're lucky to have me, she replied. 2 days later, I was in my office with the door shut, listening to their conversation over the tape. Hey, honey, you'll never guess what, Adam wants you to paint the last 2 rooms upstairs. Isn't that wonderful? Jenny said to him. So, am I getting paid the same way I did last time? Dan asked. You can count on it, but this time, we don't have to sneak around. It'll be nice not to rush things. Come over after the kids are off to school, and we'll have all the time we need. I love it when we do it in my bed. It makes me feel so naughty, especially when Adam and I end up sleeping on those same sheets, she laughed. Jenny, don't forget, I actually have to paint the rooms, too, he reminded her. Oh, come on, how long does that take? A couple of hours. I'm planning on making this project stretch at least a week. We've never had 3 days in a row, she teased. Jenny, I still have a job to get to. I can't just show up every day to satisfy you. Maybe you should let your husband handle some of the heavy lifting, he replied. He's useless and way too predictable, she said. Jenny, you're an evil woman, you know that. But remember, I'm your evil man, he said with a laugh. Thank God they stopped talking after that. I felt like I was going to throw up. It was time to devise a plan to make them both pay. Taking down Dan would be simple enough, I could send a video to his wife, and he'd be living with the fallout for the rest of his life. But that wouldn't be enough for me. They'd both humiliated me, and I wanted them to feel the weight of what they'd done every single day. I wanted revenge. If I filed for divorce, Jenny would probably end up with everything, even with her cheating. She'd get the kids, the house, and I'd be stuck paying for the next 13 years while she went on doing whatever she wanted. And, as much as the thought crossed my mind, I couldn't go the violent route. I wasn't a killer, I needed something that would hurt them both without ruining my own life. Ugh, these damn cramps, Jenny grumbled, downing 3 Tylenol. You'd think they'd sell something stronger for this at the pharmacy. Why don't you see if the doctor can prescribe something stronger? I suggested. Do you really think I haven't tried? All he gave me was some super strong aspirin. If he had a uterus, he'd know what we go through every month, she said, leaning on the bathroom counter. Her complaint sparked an idea, though I wasn't exactly sure how to pull it off just yet. But I'd find a way. There was a part of town most people with a shred of decency avoided, a place where you could get just about anything if you knew where to look. And I do mean anything. I took my old work truck, threw on a worn-out shirt and some ragged jeans, and headed to that side of town. I wasn't entirely sure what I was after, but I had an idea forming. I figured I'd need someone who knew their way around, so I stopped and picked up a streetwalker. You're not a cop, are you? She asked suspiciously. Do I look like one? I replied. She gave me the rundown on her services, cracking her gum between words. I nodded and then asked, do you know where I can score a few joints or maybe some crack? She gave me a surprised look. You don't seem like the type. It's not for me, it's for my wife. She swears it makes things better in bed. I figured I'd grab a few things so we could experiment a little. She looked at me, half ready to bolt. How much money you got? She asked. Enough for a little taste, I answered. Well, since you're tossing in an extra 50, I might be able to help you out, she said, lighting a small joint. Want a hit? She asked, holding it out. Can't. Asthma. That'd probably do me in, I replied. All right then, hand over 50 and follow my directions, she instructed. I slipped her a couple of 20s and a 10, then drove to a rundown shack she directed me to. Now give me 200 and stay put. Keep the windows up, doors locked. If someone comes by the window, ignore them, and if they pull out a gun, well, you're on your own, she said with a laugh. I knew this could backfire, but I was too far in to stop now. Just be quick about it, I said. Don't worry. I won't leave you hanging, she said as she climbed out and disappeared into the house. Stay tuned, this story isn't over. Things are just starting to heat up, and there's a lot more to come.